What's up, everybody? I'm Metal Nick,
I'm Jeff Christopher.
and welcome to episode number 78 of Vinyl Bang. Jeff, do you want to introduce today's guest?
Today's very special guest is has been a good friend of mine for what would we say the last 15 years or so?
At least 15, 20.
Close, somewhere in double digits. Clayton is a local favorite here in St. Louis. He is from the St. Louis area. You might know Clayton from the death metal alumni band Eulogy. He is also currently the drummer for local St. Louis band Pulchra Morte, amongst many other things that Clayton's done throughout his career. And I am not entirely sure how this is going to pan out for this album, but the man also has more macabre vinyl than anybody else should ever have. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Clayton Gore.
Hey, thanks, guys. Sit
Welcome to
down.
the show, bud.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I have a shitload of records, that's for sure.
We see that is quite a background behind you. And
I think this is like the third iteration of rebuilding my collection that I've had over the years.
Is that right?
I started collecting when I was still in, I want to say middle school, so 6th, 7th grade, because I moved to St. Louis the summer before that. So when I was a kid, like growing up, I was in a small town in Northeast Missouri, population like 1,000 people. There was nary a record store to be seen anywhere nearby. So I didn't really get, a lot of my own music, but I had older brothers and sisters and a cousin that lived with us. So they were 9, 10, 12 years older than me, right? So they were in high school listening to all the cool records or whatever. So I got exposed to a lot of really good music early on, but never was really able to even go shop or buy my own until far later in life. But yeah, I remember being a kid I'm older than you guys, but they had like Fisher Price. My first record player is, I don't know, the size of a 7-inch, maybe bigger.
I remember those.
Yeah, and the records were like thick plastic. Yeah, needle was like the size of a matchbox card. It's like,
My grandparents had one at their house.
Yeah. So I had that, I was like into the idea of, records, but it was much later that I bought my own. I think the first record I remember owning, they were storybook records, like this mid 70s. So I remember having the animated The Hobbit, and like you'd play it and it would, have music from the soundtrack and people reading. It was basically just lines from the movie, but you could read along in the book and it had cool art and everything. So I had that, and I had the Lord of the Rings one that I got both of those from my brother, I believe. The first record I remember picking to own was the 7-inch of Mr. Roboto. Like, I thought it was hilarious. Retarded song. But, I had to sell all those records a long time ago. So part of my mission in life has been, I want to recoup some of these records that I lost. So I just watched the episode with Kenny, and I know he was talking about some of that too. Like, I had a similar thing where when I moved to Florida right after high school, there was no way I was bringing all my records. So anything that I had up until 1990, I sold 99% of. There were a few that I kept around, but rebuying stuff. So this is the Lord of the Rings box set reissue of that original 75 soundtrack. And
Nice.
There's some cool stuff in here. It's got alternate covers, right? It doesn't have the original artwork for it, but what it does come with is like a cell from the film.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So there's some cool stuff in here. So, just sort of nostalgia trip, but I do like it. So yeah, a bunch of those storybook records. And then when I moved to St. Louis the summer before 84, I think it was 83, it was a whole new world. Like, I could go to record stores. It was like, oh my God. And I had an allowance, and I lived within walking distance of Chesterfield Mall. And there were 3 different music stores in there. So it was fantastic. I was just buying a ton of tapes, not really a ton of vinyl, because they didn't sell it there really as far as the stuff I wanted. So it wasn't until I could drive later on in high school that I would go to Vintage Vinyl down on the Loop all the time. They were great. They had a ton of metal. There was another record store down the street. There was a street side there, so I'd hit both of those. I'd drive around. There were still other street side locations that were really good. There was a Peaches Records, right? So I got a lot of records in high school that were kind of foundational that I wish I still had, but I did keep some things. So I know one of the things you were asking about was Macabre.
Mm-hmm.
So I got this when I went to Chicago for Voivod and Creator in '87. And I took the train up there. I couldn't drive. I was still, I think, 14 or 15. I guess, yeah, 14, something like that. So took the train up there. It was like 8 hours, $53 round trip. It was great. And that meant I got there that morning. It was very early. So I just went straight to the venue. Me and my friend didn't really have much else to do. And there was a record store right next door. And we were just in there flipping around, looking at stuff. And then they play music in the store. And out of nowhere, this wailing, high-pitched screaming dude and like the fastest doubles I'd ever heard come on the speakers. And my friend and I both look at each other like, what the fuck is this? And we asked the guy and he's like, oh yeah, that's Macabre. It's right over there. This just came out. Like I found out years later from Rodney that they were there at that show trying to sell those records out front, and they had just given some to that record store. So he's like, oh yeah, right there. So I'm flipping around. I'm like, he said Macabre, but this says Macabre. I don't know. So I didn't know what the fuck it was, right? But bought that record. And that's it's
real quick. I want to. That's Dave Whitty was on our show once and told a story that the first time he heard that record, he thought it was being played at the wrong speed.
Yeah, of course.
So like that's amazing that your first experience hearing that was the same thing. You were just like, what the fuck? Like that's
everybody's first reaction. That's the natural first reaction to hearing that.
Right.
My introduction to them,
especially
so like I didn't find out about them till later down the line. My introduction to them was when Dahmer had come out. I was working at a Tower Records, and these two guys that were working there were huge death metal heads, and they were like, "Have you heard Dahmer yet?" And so like I went out in the store and found it, excuse me, and bought it, and that's like a whole different. I mean, they're just great, but like, I'm sorry, continue. That's just like everybody's got a great introduction to that band, and
right,
absolutely. Were you going to say something, Jeff?
Well, I was going to say, especially for the time frame, whenever that album came out, it was just like you didn't hear anything like that.
Yeah,
they're pioneers in that shit.
And the bass sound on that just grinding so fast, like the picking, everything was phenomenal. But so this is that first original pressing. I just slit the shrink wrap, right? So it's still sort of protected. And I had the guys a few years ago sign the insert since I still have the shrink wrap on there. But this one came with this art on the inside, has lyrics on the back. And one of the main reasons I made sure I kept this all this time over the years is this original pressing has different lyrics to some of the songs. That's how I started, learning the lyrics. So that's what I remember about Macabre, and I know them frontwards and backwards, right? So then when they did the reissue years later that I also have, I'm like, these are different lyrics. That's crazy. What's happening here? So I asked Lance years later whatever happened with that, and he's like, I don't know, when we had the opportunity to go in and redo it, I never liked those, so I just recorded over them. So they don't exist anymore. You won't be able to get this except on that first pressing.
That's incredible.
Wow.
I did not know that.
Yeah, they're different lyrics that you know and love, but it's just some of the lines or the cadence is a little different. It's really cool, kind of having that, because at the time I was not able to. I didn't know of them when this came out, but years later I had to get the demo as well, 7-inch. Macabre's fucking great. I've got all their stuff, and I've known those guys a long time. Chuck used to have a T-shirt printing business that he had. So he made some of the Eulogy shirts back in the day as well.
Very nice, man. Awesome.
But so at that show where I got the Macabre, like I said, we were going to see Voivod and Creator, and the merch section was set up right when you walk in the door there. So me and my buddy, again, probably third person in line, right? We're walking in there and we stop, we take a look, and I bought 3 different Voivod shirts, 1 Creator shirt, and they had the Voivod picture discs in the merch booth, which I have, and a Creator picture disc, which I had never seen up until then. For Pleasure to Kill, you can't read it in the packaging here, but it says After the Attack. So this was actually called After the Attack, and it had an extra track on it, namely After the Attack, at the end of side 1. And this was the only way you could get it then, right? It's not like you can go search on the internet and find out what this is or whatever. I don't think they reissued it on physical format for another 15 years or so after that. So that was really cool having that. That's one of the records I kept from that initial purge.
Nice.
Yeah. It was cool. I was watching, like I said, the Kenny episode earlier. You guys were talking about tapes, and that's definitely how I really got into some of the heavier stuff. I know you guys, you have a lot of guests really in the world of metal, which is why I'm here too. I get it. But those early tape trading days, the only way to really find out anything new was that underground of tape trading, right? Like you would have guys make you mixtapes and just list out who it was. You could kind of get a flavor of stuff.
Right.
And that's how you found out all that early stuff. A lot of the great demos of bands that are staples still here today: Incantation, Immolation, Vader, the Morbid Angel stuff. Like it was an incredible scene where you were hearing all this stuff for the first time, and they're like, "What the fuck?" It would just blow your mind. Like it was great, kind of growing up alongside death metal. But again, my early exposure to music and why I started caring, one of the things in addition to metal I do like is soundtracks. So I've always kind of been a soundtrack nerd. And I was thinking earlier today about why, like what drew me to that at first. I don't know for sure, but if I had to guess, I'd say it's probably my mom taking me to see Jaws when I was 3. Like I saw that in the theater, 3, maybe 4 years old. And that soundtrack just blew me away, right? That'll stick with you. So I had to get the reissue. I think Mondo put this out a few years ago. We got the Obi strip still. I know Kenny loves his Obies. But that's sort of probably what started me down that like just very dramatic, dark, symphonic music. So I wanted to call that out because again, I'm a huge soundtrack nerd. So that was one, but then probably the greatest soundtrack of all time is Conan. Like when I first saw that, when that came out, it just blew me away. I mean, yeah, the movie's great, but that soundtrack, the movie wouldn't be what it was without that soundtrack. This is not an original pressing. It's one of the sort of mid-year reissues from MCA.
Mm-hmm.
But there's never been a proper vinyl edition of the complete score. So Basil Polidorus did a live concert where they played the complete score of Conan. It's you can still get it 2 CDs, I think, maybe 3, but no vinyl for that. So you got the original issue of the ultimate soundtrack.
Who was it? Netherton that was talking about this?
Yeah, I was just going to say.
That's what I was getting ready to say. Netherton was praising that Jason Netherton was praising that soundtrack as well. He just, that was one of his picks for his episode as well.
He had pressing for every country that it came out in. And he said the same thing. He said the same thing as you. The soundtrack made the movie.
Yeah, I mean, there's no
very adamant about like this movie was like the first like 15, 20 minutes is no talking at all. It's just this fucking So he brought that up that like this is one of those things where the soundtrack absolutely made the movie. So
yeah, I'll frequently blast that in my car, especially on road trips. Just put on that extended edition and just it's fucking great. But the world of soundtracks and metal are for sure connected. Another one of the great horror soundtracks, Damien Omen 2. So in the Damien series, this is probably my favorite. I know the first one is sort of groundbreaking, but Jerry Goldsmith's master stroke in my mind is Omen 2. Just the choir on it just feels more intense to me. But this is another one of those soundtracks that I transferred to tape and would just blast in my car all the time. When I first got that in the 80s. And come to find out a few years later, after I moved to Florida, so one of the first things that happened when I moved there, it was a horrendous road trip. Me and my buddy in my panel van just packed with all of our belongings, made it just across the Florida line, and the alternator went out. We were stranded for like 8 hours because it was the middle of the night. Long story, but all this shit happened on the road, which delayed us arriving in Florida. So we were staying with my sister for the first few months. As soon as we get to my sister's, we're just dead. And she's like, "Are you guys hungry?" We're like, "Yes, please." So she lived in this apartment complex right down the street from a Pizza Hut. We just ran up to Pizza Hut to grab some pizza. Me and my friend and my sister are sitting there eating, and I look over and I'm like, "Holy fuck, dude, is that David Vincent? Oh my God." Like we were listening to basically 4 albums that whole road trip. Terrorizer, Altars of Madness, Accused, Maddest Stories Ever Told, and Dice, the Day the Laughter Died. So it was a weird trip. So huge into metal at that point already. And we're like, fucking hey, that's David Vincent. And we were freaking out, totally like starstruck at the time, which is kind of silly thinking about now, right? He had to love it. But he's like, "You have to go say something." I'm like, "Me? What the fuck?" So anyway, eventually I go over there and introduce myself and told him, I was a fan and everything. And he's like, "Hey, you guys should come watch us practice." I'm like, "Yeah,
What?
totally. Should do that."
Wow.
So within like an hour of being in Florida, I've made friends with David Vincent. I'm going to go watch Morbid Angel practice. Like it was fucking crazy the way that worked out, but
Oh
that's
my
like day
God.
one my death metal journey in Florida started. So that was
Holy
great.
shit. That's
Anyway,
insane, dude.
I became friends with them. So years later, how this ties to Omen 2 is Trey told me that that middle part of Immortal Rites, that that's directly lifted from the Omen. And I'm like, fuck, I didn't ever put that together. But when he said it, I can't unhear that. But he was a huge fan. So that's kind of where that came from. And then, Entombed, of course, Left Hand Path, like the whole outro being Phantasm. Like there's a lot of, crossover between soundtracks and metal, I think.
Yeah.
For sure.
Wow, what a story, dude.
Yeah.
Going to Pizza Hut, not only being able to get the personal pan pizzas for one, and for the time frame.
And the salad bar.
Dude, the book it thing, like you could have totally got your free personal pan pizzas. Meeting David Vincent in fucking Pizza Hut, dude. Like
That's incredible. Yeah.
You can't make this shit up, man.
Yeah,
No,
that's a really good fucking story.
That's a good story.
yeah, that like just the way shit happened in Florida just was really crazy. There was a lot
Wow.
of that.
Wow.
That's amazing.
So I tried to keep a lot of stuff that I know you haven't seen before. That's the things I pulled, and I'm still sort of in soundtrack world. But recently, this soundtrack is fucking unreal. So this is the Dune sketchbook soundtrack, not the Dune soundtrack, the sketchbook.
Huh.
And so Hans Zimmer doesn't write everything himself. He has a studio, and what I mean by that is not a place where all the recording, instrumentation is. Sure, it is that, but also a studio where a bunch of other folks work. So there were, I think, 80 different people, something like that worked on the Dune soundtrack and submitted, ideas for it. They couldn't use all of them. So that's what this sketchbook is stuff that did not appear in Dune. But there's a lot of guest musicians on here too. So I think Lustmord had some stuff on this that he contributed to. And I'm a huge fan of that kind of dark, like ambient, experimental stuff. Lustmord and Slaughter Natives, Dissecting Table in the world of really electronica stuff. So seeing Lustmord on this was great. But so highly recommend, if you haven't, check out the Dune sketchbook. Fucking phenomenal.
I didn't realize that was a thing, dude. Those movies are great. Both movies are
Yeah.
fucking amazing.
I mean, I'm a huge Dune nerd. I read literally all of the books a few years ago. I think it was 18 at the time. There's more now. But yeah, as a huge Dune fan and fan of the David Lynch version for a long time, which I saw in the theater when it came out, sitting in the front row. I don't know why. It's probably the first and only time I've ever sat in the front row willingly. But we were just like staring at the screen straight up and that insane design. So, yeah, I think the new ones were good. Certainly more book accurate for sure.
Yeah.
To a point. I have my nitpickings, but that's a different podcast.
I'm sure you do. Yeah, we don't have time for that today.
Yeah, man. Soundtracks, a couple other ones I'll just honorable mention real quick.
Oh,
Another
yes.
fantastic soundtrack. So Eulogy, for the longest time, like I put together the intros and we would have intros, on cassette tape. So I lifted parts of this, like parts of the initial, the beginning, and then parts of another piece later, the hunters. The hunt builds, sorry, and kind of merged them together for this killer intro because we were all huge fans of this. I worked at a movie theater when this movie came out, so
Nice.
everybody in the band came up the midnight before Thursday night to watch it, and we've all been fans since then. So this one, again, hasn't had a deluxe reissue yet. So these there's been a few pressings of this. They're all very thin, but it gets the job done. Until there is a deluxe reissue, which I hear is coming. Last year, I went to the first American showing in Chicago of the Symphonic Dracula, where they show the film in the background and the orchestra plays the soundtrack live up in Chicago. And it's fucking unreal. So good.
So hold up real quick before we move on. I have a question. I love Bram Stoker's Dracula, probably the most underrated Dracula movie in all Dracula movies. Is it a score or a soundtrack?
Yeah, I understand the difference. I don't think there was. I'm just sitting here playing the movie in my head. I don't think there was really any songs on that soundtrack. It was all score.
Yeah. That's interesting.
That's what I always did, so it's hard to get back into the habit of score. Soundtrack is like songs.
I got you. I that's interesting, and yeah, what would I would assume someone like Waxwork or Mondo would probably put out a reissue of something like that, because that was I think I was in the 7th grade when that came out, and around that time, like, horror movies were practically dead. I think like the next one that came out that I was really intrigued in, but was like the end of it really was Tales from the Crypt Presents Demon Night.
Right.
After that, horror movies were practically nothing after that. But that was a phenomenal film. I love, Keanu was fucking great in that movie. I usually shit on that guy and everything he does, but he was so fucking awesome in that film. Gary Oldman was in that, right? He was.
Yeah.
I mean, just man. That's incredible. I'm glad you brought that out, because me and my boss talk about that movie a lot. Like, he loves that movie. He actually has the Gary Oldman Dracula on his fucking.
Oh wow, nice.
Yeah, so it's
no, it was great. It's kind of funny now, like the way that younger people that weren't there when it came out view it, because when we're watching the orchestra version, it's kind of, there were spots in the film where everybody's laughing, like, okay, yeah, I get it. It's pretty hammy, but it would never occur to me that it was funny. But like the way other people view that movie now is a little different.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's dated, is what I'm saying. But yeah, I agree. It's fucking great. In fact, my first wedding, I had tattooed rings designed that had like the top of the gargoyle head and then a strip that was like its mouth. And there were roses in it, and then its chin on the bottom, so it just wrapped around your finger.
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah, I would show you, but I've had 8, 9, I think, different sessions for tattoo removal, and it's all sort of almost gone. All these years later, I wanted to get it removed. And after that 8th session, I had a massive fucking blister that was like 2 inches tall, and it left a scar. And I'm just like, you know what? Fuck it. It's as gone as it's getting. I'd rather have that than scarring, I don't know.
Sure.
Plus it sucks. Like, laser removal is twice as painful as the tattoos.
Yeah, I've heard. Real quick before we move up, because I don't know if we're going to get into the orchestra playing in front of a movie scenario again. Am I going to see you in October? Are you going to be at
Absolutely.
the factory, dude? I'm fucking
Yeah.
so excited for that show,
Yeah.
dude. That's going to be amazing.
I wish it was 2.
I
One
wish
for
it
the
was
sound.
2 as well, but still,
Yeah.
the orchestra playing in front of the original Evil Dead.
Yeah.
God,
No,
I'm
it's going
so
to be
excited for
phenomenal.
this.
It's kind of a weird venue for that, but it should work.
I believe it will, dude. The factory rules. It's a
Yeah. I
great
love
venue, and this will be my first orchestrated. You know what you described, the very first orchestra playing along with a movie, and
Yeah.
I couldn't pick a better movie. I mean, the original Evil Dead. I figured you would be there, but I figured I would
Oh,
ask.
I could pick a better movie. Like, I told my wife, if they ever tour Conan, wherever the fuck it is, we're going to that. I don't care where it is. But yeah, I've seen a bunch of those. So Fellowship of the Ring, the new one, Godfather, Gladiator, one of the Harry Potters. I think I've gone to a bunch of them. They're great.
Nice.
Yeah. Further nerding out on soundtracks. Like I'm not a huge signature chaser guy, but I thought this was kind of interesting. So they sold some of these Too Old to Die Young soundtracks that had the signatures on them. So that's the director, Nick Winding Refn, and the composer on there, Cliff Martinez, and one of the stars of the show. So I don't know. That was a great show. Like Refn, in my opinion, should only ever do long form TV. I thought until that last one. Like, that was pretty weird. I don't know about that one. Also have Amila signed Resident Evil: The Final Chapter, which has the composer signature and Mila's signature on that, as well as the director.
Very nice.
Yeah, signed stuff. Oh, okay. So before we get out of soundtracks, I'm sorry if I'm moving around on you. I want to show you something I know nobody has brought on the show. So there's this record label called Cadabra Records, and they put out mostly spoken word records. So they'll read, Lovecraft stories, or Poe stuff. They've done a bunch of those, and some other short horror stories. And I got in when they first started. I had a subscription, and they made available, I think it was during that first year, it might have been the second one, to subscribers that you could buy one of the 20. There were only an edition of 20, but they only sold 15 box sets of this, which is, this is velvet. This huge box is like covered in velvet, so it's hard to get a picture.
Uh-huh.
But it's a Lovecraft story called The Picture House, and it's read by Lamont Hush. But more importantly, I know Kenny was talking about it, Fabio Frizzi does the score. So there's music underneath it while they're reading it. So yeah, there were only 15 of this version, which includes a test pressing and, a whole portfolio of art prints, etc. But the piece de la resistance is the blood-filled vinyl.
Fucking rad, dude. Yeah, that's
awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I definitely haven't seen anybody have that one on here. I mean, again, it's not something you put on all the time, but if you're in the mood, it's cool. But the record's really cool. And for that, I did not get the Friday the 13th blood filled. When that drop happened, like, that was a nightmare. I know some people got it, and I just saw one listed recently for $40,000. Like, good fucking luck.
Wow.
But that blood filled is cool. And for Jaws, the 50th anniversary, they're doing several different variants of the reissue of the soundtrack, and one is ocean filled, so like blue, gel. And I've got one of those coming in the mail right now.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay, so I said growing up, I had brothers and sisters that were into music. They had, like, Beatles back in the USSR, like the double live album. And I remember they had a bunch of shit Frank Zappa, Boston, I would hear and I would play secretly when they weren't around. But one of the things I remember coming out was this record. Um, they had this, and my parents just didn't know what the hell to make of it. And, like Nana eats the yellow snow, right? But I loved this record. I thought it was great even as a kid, probably because of the silly lyrics, but I had to get this reissue when it came out not too long ago because they've got a live gig as well on side two. So this is a great record. It's a good entry to Zappa. If you're new to Zappa, I'd also suggest maybe Baby Snakes with Terry Bozzio drumming, but as a drummer, I'm biased.
Mhm.
Anyway, I love that Frank Zappa record.
This now, real quick, just on
Yeah.
that one. The episode that has not premiered yet, the episode before yours.
Yeah.
My buddy Brad Jameson has a promotional copy of that.
Nice.
Yeah, and he showed that on his episode. So just be sure to check that one out because he goes into a pretty good story about it as well. So.
Yeah, that's great. I love Zappa. I mean, I've got a ton of Zappa, but Zappa is the one rabbit hole as a collector you probably don't want to go down. Like
Right.
There's 8 billion pressings, bootlegs, live. Like it gets very expensive.
I've told this several times throughout the show, but like there was a point in time whenever I would go to record stores, and if I didn't find anything I wanted, I would just grab a random Zappa album because those things are always like in abundance at record stores, and there's always something that I've never seen before.
Yeah,
I just grab a random Zappa album.
For sure. So in our cars, when I was a kid, it was 8 tracks. Like that was, AM, FM, 8 tracks. That was the technology in the vehicle at the time. And as a kid, I didn't have any control over the stereo. So I remember my parents had a few specific 8 tracks they would shove in the console. They had like Gordon Lightfoot and, Glenn Campbell, Rhinestone Cowboy, that kind of shit, Bob Seger. And then one that we would play when I would have to go to the dentist, which is like an hour away, was this one, Wings Over America. So this is another record that was very forming to me just because of the quantity of times I heard it. 8 tracks were not nearly as small as cassettes, so you could only carry so many in the car. So I heard this a whole lot. This is a recent repress. I don't know how you guys feel about when there's stickers on the Mylar on the bags. Do you just keep the original bag?
So
I will let Nick explain this. Nick
I learned this from the Waxwork group. Somebody shared this tip with me years ago, and I fucking love it. So if it's on the record itself, that sucks. Like I leave it. Sometimes those are just relics.
Yeah.
When I learned a while back that you don't want to leave anything in the original shrink wrap because it eventually warps the vinyl. So, in the Waxworks group, people were like, those hype stickers were so fucking beautiful and elegant looking. Like they put heart into it. First thing I ever got was the Thing score, and I got the Breakaway one. So, somebody said if you tear around the sticker, put it in the freezer for about a minute, take it out, and then just start slowly peeling it from sides, you should be able to preserve it well. And then just get like a basic sleeve, throw the record in there, and you can slap it on. I can't tell you how many records I've saved. Like I've had to sacrifice a couple. I'm like, oh, this is a nice hype sticker, and then it just like it rips in half, and that sucks. But I do my best to preserve them because like if I flip these records, if I sell them, I let people know like the original hype sticker is still attached, but to a new sleeve, and like I take great care of this record. So that is like a way of I mean Jeff knows some of these things are numbered, and those are a bitch.
Yeah.
You don't want to fuck those up.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
and his method, I've done it for years now. I mean, Nick, you told me about this years ago, and I can't count how many times I've done this. And just like him, 9 times out of 10 it works. But every now and then you get the one that's just like,
those
are heartbreakers. Those are heartbreakers.
Sucks, but
I just cut around them like this guy. I mean, I just take some of the some of the shrink wrap, with it and just shove it in the bag
for sure.
But like I try to keep them, but yeah, I can't. Like you said, you can't leave it in the original cellophane. I showed you the macabre that is where I just slid it, but that's like one. I've got maybe, I don't know, 3 that I left like that. Otherwise, I always open them and rebag them in archival bags anyway. So I'll just cut it. But yeah, if it's on the jacket, God, that sucks. I got one not too long ago that had that. I'm like, still, really? We're
A lot
doing
of early
that?
earache did that, and I think a couple of like Metal Blade European ones over the years have put it on there.
Yeah, it's rough. So yeah, that Paul McCartney and Wings Over America live album, it's great. I love that record. I like that probably more than the Beatles. I know I'm that guy, but I was never like Beatles were fine. It's whatever. But I like Wings, and that album in particular is great. Like peak Paul McCartney.
A lot of people seem to think "Live and Let Die" was a Beatles song.
Yeah, I thought it was a Guns N' Roses song. All right, so how about some other older stuff? I don't think anybody's shown. This band, UK, this album, they only had a couple records, I think, but this album, Danger Money, in particular, I recommend. This is very early Terry Bozzio. He's the man. Look at that youngster right there. But I love this record. It's really good. You can hear. So one of my favorite things Terry did outside of Zappa is this project called Bozzio, Levin, Stevens, which I also have. But those 3 guys just show up to the studio, spend, I don't know what it is, 2 weeks, 15 days, a month in there, and they just show up with nothing and start improvising and see what works and what sticks. And it's all instrumental. 2 records, but Blacklight Syndrome, the first one, BLS, is great. On that record, you can hear a lot of the same licks that Terry started doing on this record. So I know he's done a bunch of projects, but this to me is where you start hearing fills that are signature Terry Bozzio. So that's a cool record to check out.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay. So how about this? We're talking about, I'm sorry if I keep going out of frame, but I've got stacks of shit everywhere here I want to show you. So early mid 80s hardcore from Chicago, Life Sentence. I originally just grabbed it. I love the, parody logo. I think it's phenomenal. It makes a great t-shirt. I've had 4 or 5 of them over the years with just this white, black. I've got 2 right now that I bought when they reissued them the last time. One that I wear, and one's just in my drawer for when the one I wear wears out. I love this record. They only had 2 records. So they had, this is the debut. It was essentially like 3 different demo sessions. But it's real raw, early hardcore stuff. It's great. And where I got introduced to them was another time I took the train to Chicago to go see Macabre. They played at, I forget what the place was called, but it was like in the strip mall, just some club, right? And Life Sentence was opening. Actually, I think Macabre opened for Life Sentence. Maybe it was, I don't know how that happened. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but I think that's what happened because I remember seeing Macabre. It was great. And then I'm hanging out with Dennis after the show, and he's like, "Oh, you got to check out these guys." Maybe it was before they played. Regardless, Dennis was telling me these guys are great. You got to check them out. So I did, and he was correct. During that show, Life Sentence also played their cover of Godzilla, Blue Oyster Cult song, which they issued later on a 7-inch that I have. But during that song, I think Dennis got up there and was singing with them. Like it was cool. These guys were great. This record, the second record, is also good, but the production is way too polished for them. Like it just, you lost the rawness and the anger that was there. So there was no original pressing. I don't think that wasn't a thing, but it was all tape, right? But they did reissue this a few times. This is the one that just got reissued, I think, 2 years ago. That has the demo tracks on there as well. It's really cool. I've got another bootleg pressing that's on red vinyl that was just the direct tape rip. Anyway, lots of different ways you can get that record now, and you should.
This is what I was looking for with you. I have finally added an album to my Spotify of a band that I've never heard before. So
Yeah, you should definitely do that.
I
Fucking
definitely
great.
want to check this band out. Awesome.
Yeah, so I talked about it a little bit earlier, but to me, Altars of Madness was like peak. That was where I heard death metal and was like, oh, okay, yeah, this for sure. Um, and I've never heard anything like it since, right? There's been a lot of bands that try to copycat what they did, but even from Morbid Angel, we never got another record like this. So obviously not the first pressing, which I remembered picking up at um, that record shop in the Loop, Vintage Vinyl, one year when it first came out. But this is the FDR pressings that Earache did not too long ago. They did one with the inverted color scheme, the negative on the front, and it was like 100, I think, copies that they put out. But same audio except the full dynamic range mastering, allegedly. Let's call it a cash grab. But it does sound fucking phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah.
On the subject of Morbid Angel, though, that being probably my favorite death metal record, there was another record that is harder to get. That is this 7-inch. They did a split with Slaughterlord, and there's been a few bootlegs of this, which in and of itself is a bootleg. So who knows? But you can find them. This is one that took me a long time to get. The reason is because the Morbid Angel song that's on this record is called Funerals, and this is the only recording of that song. The audio's a little fucked up. It's a little fast. Like David kind of sounds like a chipmunk in parts, but if you rip this, which I have, and tempo correct it down, it's still one of my favorite Morbid Angel songs that I never did get to see them live as much as I interacted with them and played shows with them and all that. I don't think they've ever played it. And then when Richard was out of the band, I asked Trey, and he just said, "Oh, that's a Richard thing." I don't know what that means, but anyway, if you can find it, that Morbid Angel song "Funerals" is fantastic.
Right on.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Florida. I mean, this was the first time I heard these guys. This 7-inch, fucking phenomenal. This one's not in the best shape because it's survived several moves, but just these two songs was my introduction to these guys, and just crazy how good this was. What was hilarious about this one, though, is there's no indication of speed of the record when you get it. And I fucking hate that. Put it on the label, man. I don't know what it is. I don't want to have to be 30 seconds into a song and go, no. Go restart it. Put it on the goddamn label. So when I first put this on, I didn't know it was 45. And we were playing it at 33. And instead of, it's like, it's so heavy. And just, once I heard it that way, it's so goddamn funny. I know it's not great for the record, but if you get one cheap, play it at 33. It's a hoot.
That's awesome.
So, speaking of great demos, a few years ago, I guess maybe 10 at this point, who knows? Entombed had a Kickstarter campaign, Alex from Entombed, to reissue a bunch of their records. So I was part of that, and as part of that, there was another crowdfunding. Maybe it wasn't Kickstarter, whatever, Indiegogo, whatever it was, where he put out all the Nihilist demos, like reissued them on vinyl. So I've got this box set of the Nihilist demos. So it's got all the good tracks on there, and basically all the demos you can think of, plus the Entombed demo at the end after they changed their name. So this is, fundamental. You must have this as any kind of death metal fan. And Alex was kind enough to say thanks.
Awesome. Dude, that's rad.
Yeah. Yeah, he was cool. I kind of emailed with him a couple times. And then, when they did that clandestine live later, which I've got back there, that was crazy. Like Nikki back in, and just that's such a great performance. Obviously, LG wasn't there. But it was phenomenal. So if you're an Entombed fan, seek that out if you haven't heard it.
Right
on. Yeah. So I know you talked about Dark Throne a lot with Kenny. Made me think of this record, Nocturno Culto's Gift of Gods. It's an EP, and I don't know if he's ever going to do another one. But, Kenny was talking about one of the things he likes about Dark Throne is they kind of do whatever they want, and I'm a huge Dark Throne fan, too. I think I've got one thing pulled from them. I've got a ton of their records. But this one, Nocturno Culto, kind of, speaking of doing whatever you want, dove heavy into, 70s heavy metal, and it's really good. I don't know if it's findable. Should be. But anyway, if you can find that, you should check that out. Nocturno Culto's Gift of God.
Okay.
Yeah, so on that topic of Dark Throne, I know we've all seen Dark Throne records. I'm not going to go through it a lot, but they had this box set a few years ago called Black Death and Beyond. And sorry for the glare. But, it's got all the demos and early rehearsals and stuff on vinyl. It's a really cool set. But I bring it out because what was really cool how they did it was on the spine of the box set. They made it look like other records. So when you put it in your shelf, it looks like a stack of these other records.
Oh, really?
Yeah, great. And the other records are Bathory, Blood, Fire, Death, A Dark Angel, Darkness Descends, Accept, Breaker, Destruction, Infernal, Overkill, and Time Wind. Right, it's really cool. So not only is that a funny idea, but they're also all great albums.
Huh.
That's incredible.
That is pretty badass. That's a
I
good.
didn't know they had a sense of humor like that.
That's
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. Okay, so I don't know how much longer you want to go this session, so I'm not going to let it get away without talking about the greatest band to ever do it in the world of metal, Ripping Corpse. So they only have one official full-length album out, and if you only ever hear that, you'd be like, maybe, sure, it's good, but so what? You have to see them. And there's all kinds of other songs that they recorded that aren't on that record. And they only got better after that record. There's a industry demo from 92 that's out there. There's the Lost album, they call it, which has no vocals, but it's all the music. That's on YouTube. I'm sure you can find that. Ton of rehearsals, but man, all the later stuff was just getting into a world that was groundbreaking. Like nobody had ever heard anything like Ripping Corpse. Even the earlier stuff, they just were in their own world. And seeing them live, I had the pleasure of playing a show with them in Tampa with Eulogy, standing side stage, watching them. Like they were all lunatics, and it was unbelievable. So one of the early appearances of Ripping Corpse was on this compilation album called Satan's Revenge Part 2. It's got a ton of different bands on it, as you would expect, but Ripping Corpse, second song there, fantastic appearance. And this was a little bit of a harder one to track down, but the Ripping Corpse song on here is The Unblessed. There's also bands on here like Necrovore, which you may have talked about on a previous episode, but if you haven't heard of Necrovore, from Texas, really early pioneers in this world of metal. They're also on here Anchor Watt, which is another great band. The Morbid Angel, Thy Kingdom Come from the demo is on here with Wayne on drums. Fucking phenomenal. And then hilariously, this band Vacant Grave from St. Louis. I have no idea how the hell they got on this record. It's crazy. They never really put out a record, I don't think, but man, they played every show there was to play and, opening for bands. And very amusingly, I think I was 15. I was working as a landscaper and I showed up for work the first day and my crew chief was the guy from Vacant Grave. So it was kind of funny. Very, very weird. Anyway, early Ripping Corpse appearance on this comp.
Cool.
And then, one of the monumental releases from them, the Splattered Remains demo, got put out on the CCG Underground Records demo series. They did a few of these. There's a Agoraphobia one that's phenomenal as well. But it's just a vinyl pressing of that Splattered Remains demo. So that's a must-have as well. Pretty plain sleeve, but this was their trademark. If you saw this, you knew what it was.
We first thing Dave Whitty broke out was the cassette, and then he said years later he was driving and like I think he was in Norway or something, and they drove past the record store and he saw it in the window. He's like, "What was that? Drive back!" And then they went in there and he found it on vinyl. So that was one of the very first things he shared on our show was the Ripping. He was tight with those guys. I mean, they were just next town over from him, and same thing you're saying is like when they hit the scene, everybody had never heard anything like that before. So
yeah,
good stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't know about that Satan's Revenge compilation. Jeff, you ever heard that before?
No.
Yeah, that's a new one to me. I should look into see maybe there's some older demos on there that we need to know about.
Yeah,
I mean, it's 50-50, right? Most of the ones I already called out were all the kind of bands you would know. And then, there's other bands that were just trying to make it, right?
Sure.
Gotcha.
And then, of course, the one and only official release, Ripping Corpse Dreaming with the Dead.
Mm-hmm.
Phenomenal record. I'm not saying it's not, but that it's very polished and it just doesn't capture the ferocity of what these guys were doing. Even so, you should buy this and everyone should own this. This is a blueprint for how to do it. They were completely original while, keeping elements of, kind of how metal writing is approached and just going insane. They were literally all lunatics, and I stayed friends with them since that show. Years later, when Eric moved to Tampa after Ripping Corpse broke up, the first thing he did, like he was playing with Eulogy, we were between guitarists, he played with us for like a week, and then he's like, "Hey, so Morbid Angel, wants me to go play." I'm like, "Obviously, what the hell are you doing with us?" So yeah. Been friends with them a long time. I played later on with Eric and Alas for a while too. But yeah, those are mandatory Ripping Corpse releases. Everyone must have that. Don't think I've heard anybody. And by the way, Whitty, I mean, Human Remains. Whitty's a god. He's fantastic.
Sure.
Yes, he is.
Great dude too.
Absolutely.
One of the greatest people I've ever met in my life, for sure.
Yeah, he rules. Haven't seen anybody talk a whole bunch about Killing Joke. So I've got, I think Killing Joke is number 2 as far as the most records I own. I've got a ton of Killing Joke stuff. But this one from 2003, this self-titled, they've also got an early album that's self-titled. But this one features Dave Whitty on drums. And this is, sorry, Jesus, we were just talking about Dave Whitty. Sorry, Dave Grohl on drums.
Wow.
You can see his name right there, wherever that is. Yeah, so this is a great record. Also featured on the Need for Speed Underground soundtrack, or Underground 2, the Death and Resurrection show, that first song. So this is a great record.
That's the album where I guess the story I was told was because they have a song that they were put out in the 80s that sounds an awful lot like "Come As You Are." So I think the story was they were going to sue Nirvana, and Dave Grohl was like, "Please don't. I'll play drums on your next album if And that's how that came about. Am I right about that?
That makes sense.
I don't know if you've ever heard that story before. Somebody once told me that, and I was like, "That's crazy." But there is a song. There is a song that Clayton Gore wrote in like the 80s that like, and then in 91, "Come As You Are" came out, and it was just all too.
The song is called. The name of the song is 80s. The name of the song, Killing Joke, is 80s.
Oh, okay.
80s.
Okay.
So yeah, I believe that. But I love Killing Joke. They were really, R.I.P. to their guitar player now. So I don't know what's going to happen. But they were really one of the last real rock bands out there. At least everything post 1996 was way more rock than their earlier stuff, and it's all great. So I don't know if you are into these dudes. Karma to Burn, Instrumental. after this record. This was their first record, self-titled, and it was maybe half instrumental, and the other half had vocals. Different vocalists were singing on it. This is a phenomenal, phenomenal record. But everything these guys did after this record was all instrumental. So they're a three-piece. They played Fubar, I want to say maybe 10 years ago.
Mhm.
Crazy because there was like 20 people there. But me and those 20 people had a fucking fantastic show. So they're still out there doing it. Can't get a bad record from them, but I like this one because of the vocals. Like some of the vocals on here are great. So it's cool to hear them with vocals.
So would you recommend that one?
Absolutely. I'm just saying, don't get used to the vocals because they go away after
Right,
this.
right. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've heard the name, but I don't know that I've ever, taken the initiative to listen to them. And I was definitely not one of the 20 people at Fubar that night, unfortunately. But I will check out that album.
You absolutely should.
Awesome.
It's great. How about speaking of early 80s kind of hardcore, or at least proto hardcore, this record, that's Die Kreutzen record, first one, self-titled, crazy record. When you talk about kind of the tempo and some of the time signatures, it's very sort of math metal-y, very raw record. Like, don't expect super polished production. It's almost actually too polished in some parts with the separation, but it's still very good record. They had another one or so after this. They kind of changed direction a little bit, but this first one's very raw and aggressive. I love this record.
Right on.
I listen to all kinds of shit. So how about something completely different? Front 242. This was my introduction to them. This Up Evil record. It's unreal. So there's two records that came out at the same time. One of them's a remix record, but this one, Up Evil, is the one to get. It's fantastic if you're into like that kind of electronic music, right? I wouldn't call it dance, but like in the very early club scenes in the States anyway, when you went to more goth clubs, you'd hear it there, right? So every record has a story, I remember the first time I heard this, and years later went by and I was like, what the fuck was that? And then I heard the song again and I'm like, them. So I worked backwards from here with Front 242. I do celebrate their entire catalog. But this record's very raw, aggressive, sort of, I don't know about raw, but aggressive, really, that kind of dark electronic music. Very good.
They were what I've heard the name, and I remember wanting to check them out at one point, but they were late 90s, mid 90s.
Man, they've been around since the 80s for sure. Like, they've got a ton of stuff. Them and Frontline Assembly, they're got just a huge amount of stuff. Their earlier and later stuff was a little bit different than that record. So all the albums are kind of different, really, but that record's kind of unique in how electronic it goes and fuzzy. So it's cool. Check it out.
Okay.
Are you? I know you, Jeff, like kind of that math metal-y stuff. I know you like Ken Mode and stuff. Have you ever heard of this instrumental band from Japan called Tay? It's T with an accent over the E.
I don't think so.
So Tay, they're all instrumental. I've got a couple of their vinyl releases. This one was hard to track down. It's a box set that has their first 3 records. Very straightforward cover, crazy jellyfish, right? But yeah, it's got their first 3 records in this. It took many years to find one that had reasonable shipping that was in good shape, because I think most of them had severe corner dings from shipping, especially the ones over here, because they were coming from Japan. So don't worry about trying to find the vinyl. There's one after this that was more easy to find. You can still get this. It's kind of expensive, but you should absolutely check out Tay. It's T with an accent over the E, just T-E. I'm pretty sure you say it Tay. I don't know, but they're great.
Okay.
Yeah. What else, man? How about we'll go a little back in the soundtracky direction. I want to talk about some Liebach. So I don't know if you've ever gotten into them. They're also mostly sort of an electronic. I don't know. There's some that it's hard to really describe what Liebach is. Sort of a cross between like krautrock and like dark ambient stuff on some records. Just every record's different. And then they have like Beatles remixes, and they did a Beatles cover. Like they're just all over the place. Morbid Angel did do a collaboration with Liebach, but I first got into Liebach before that when I met Morbid Angel. Trey and David in particular were super into Liebach, so they played some Liebach for me. They were really liked the album before this. It's a long name, but ends in baptism. So I just called it Baptism. But this record, so those two records in particular, Baptism and this one, Macbeth, are phenomenal. The pressing isn't particularly impressive. It's pretty thin, but it's pretty standard for that era. This is a great record. There are some vocalines, but it's not like singing. There's no vocals. This is actually the record that my firstborn son was born to. So, and the hospital, you could pick the music you want playing, during the delivery or whatever. So I brought a tape of Liebach. I'm like, just put this on. Like, it's, I don't know, 40 minutes or something long. Like, it should be fine. Yeah. But lo and behold, yeah, 10 a.m., put this on, and I was holding my son at like, I don't know, 10:04. So I didn't get to listen to a lot of it, but he was born to that. I love that record.
Awesome. That's a good story.
Yeah. What else? Oh, yeah. Let's talk about these dudes. So Denmark certainly has a lot of great music. Obviously, Merciful Fate. And I'm not comparing these two, but in the early days, especially of metal, it was very hard to find new bands. Like, I said earlier, I've got the record stores at the mall, but like they're not going underground. Occasionally they'd get stuff on some of the bigger, smaller labels. And you would just have to take a shot. You'd look at it and be like, sure, I guess. And then maybe it sucks. So what I started doing was picking up the tapes and then running down to Famous Bar, opening the tape, putting it in the tape player and listening, just fast forwarding, listen to like 10 seconds, fast forward, listen, and just try and hear it and see if it was any good. And if it wasn't, I'd just take the tape out and pull it out and crunch it up and then roll it back up, run back upstairs and return it and go, hey, I put this in and it sounds like shit, man. Can I get something else? So that was one way to find new stuff. The other way to find new stuff was there was this catalog, like mail order. It was, I don't know, A5 size, just, little stapled together loose leaf, called Metal Disc. And they would have band, release name, and then in parentheses, like 2 or 3 other band names, just, kind of for fans of. So that's the only way you could find new music, was you just be like, I don't know, that name is pretty heavy sounding, that album title, sure. Endless Pain, great, for sure. And then you'd be like, oh, I know those 3 bands, so sure, I'll order that. And you just throw a dart, right? And that's how I got into a lot of stuff from the early German thrash days. And, you were just really just trying to pick stuff out. But then I found Creator, Destruction, I think Voivod that way, right? For fans of Motorhead. So one of the things, there was a compilation that had this heavy ass song on it called Plague of Messiah by this Denmark band called Sam Hain. And they eventually had to change their name. Their new name is like Des Exalt or something. But I remembered that song forever, that Plague of Messiah, and actually Plague of Messiah. And kept trying to find out who this band was. I couldn't ever remember the band name. And then I researched and I'm like, yes. And I'm like, holy shit, they have a whole album. So one of those compilations, like Satan's Revenge, I forget which one it was, Speed Metal Hell, sure, something like that, had this on it. Years later, I found out, yeah, they had an entire record. So, They're out of Denmark, and it's just very heavy, very raw, sort of proto death metal, like very aggressive. I don't know what to call it, but there's a reissue of this. I don't know if it was a demo or an album, but it sounds like an album. The Courier. Uh, they've done it, reissued it twice in the last few years, but it's got like the complete demos on it and stuff. This one is actually a numbered copy, 430 out of 500 of this last reissue. So kind of an obscure band, but very heavy. You should check them out.
Nice.
Don't think anybody's shown you that. Yeah, I think that's all I had pulled. But I can grab literally anything else. So how about something weird? Nader Sadek. You know who that is?
I know that name because of Travis Ryan's involvement in the Malefic, I want to say.
Right.
Was that what he did with Nader?
And yeah, so some of the earlier stuff like Flow was playing on it. So, and I like Nader Sadek's art. So I wanted to check it out. Started talking to him on, I think it was Facebook Messenger. And he said this album is going to have a very small run. Like he's like, I'm going to make a box for it because, he does masks and stuff. So he's like, I'm making an art box for it. That'll be really cool. Do you want one? I'm like, sure. I just threw a dart, took a chance on it. And he made this box. It's like balsa wood, covered with very thick wax that's been melted down the sides. And he put these kind of crystals on top. And there's a drawer where the CD was in there. It's a little battery in there so that when you close the drawer, the nose lights up.
Huh. And that's something.
Yeah, so very weird small run stuff. I mean, that's kind of my collection. I don't seek out first pressings of, ancient vinyls. Like I want it to have the best sound quality there is. And if it's brand new, I'm the original owner, 4 sharp corners, I'm happier than trying to chase an old pressing just to have it because I probably wouldn't play it anyway. And so that's kind of my philosophy in this third stage of building this collection is for most of this stuff, I'm the original owner. It's just some of the older stuff that, I had to chase down a copy or whatever that was secondhand. But I've just built this buying new over the years and collecting. I said I'm super into soundtracks. Shout out Waxwork. You mentioned that earlier. I'm actually wearing a Waxwork 2015 subscriber T-shirt right now. I was in with them very early because I was into the Death Waltz records when Spence was running that himself before Mondo bought them. And then when Waxwork came out, it's like, oh, cool, another very horror-oriented soundtrack label for sure. So there's only 1 year that I didn't subscribe. There was just nothing in it that I wanted. But yeah, got a lot of obscure stuff.
Hell yeah, man. We appreciate that. That was a sick collection, and there's definitely some couple things that we definitely have to check out from that list.
For sure.
Yeah. Well,
great stories and great vinyl.
Yeah.
Dude, like I said, following your posts on Facebook, where just you're posting vinyl all the time. Like, dude, we have to fucking have Clayton on the show. Absolutely have to have him on the show. So I'm glad we were able to make this happen.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe I'll send you a link to my collection if there's anything in particular you want to look at or check out. Come back on.
For sure. Yeah, we'll definitely do an episode where we'll pull through your discogs and make you talk about those particular records.
Yeah,
for sure. But yeah, you mentioned before we go, can I do a quick plug?
Sure.
So yeah, you Pulchra Morte. We are still a thing. I know our last full length came out in 2020, I want to say, Ex Rosa Ceremonia, that second record. But we did just release a new single, I think 3 months ago now. So May 2nd, it hit Bandcamp exclusively for that weekend. And now it's on all streaming platforms out there called When Hearts Become the Wave. So you should check out that single. It's actually something we recorded in the Ex Rosa sessions. We recorded 11 songs, but we could only put 9 on the record because of time constraints on the side of a record. And vinyl was mandatory. So there were 2 songs we didn't put on it. This was one of them. and we just never, we kind of had it, and we just, I know Jarrett wasn't really thrilled with it, so we completely deleted all the drums and guitars, and me and Jarrett went and redid this song last year, completely kind of ground up, except for vocals and bass. And the point is, I'm glad we didn't release it 5 years ago, because it's a completely different song now, and I personally think it's probably one of the best things that me and him ever wrote. We just kind of crashed the studio for 5 days and just played around, because he owns his own studio, tons of gear. We actually put there's a couple parts where we got some synth underneath it to fatten it up. Like, we just kind of dicked around and ended up on this version of this song. So you should go check that song out.
Awesome. Yeah.
Killer.
Yep.
Well, thank you, Clayton. Appreciate all the good stories and awesome records you brought out today. Jeff?
Dude, Clayton, thank you so much, man. I'm glad we were able to make this happen. I'm glad you were obviously a fan of the show. You referenced several episodes and showing the backstories or whatever, and I'm glad we were able to do this. So thank you.
Absolutely.
It was a fun episode
sweat.
for sure, man.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, thank you for coming on. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We will see you all next week.
All right. See you guys.
Final thing,